Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Imran bin Suhaimi from DKM3C. My metric card number is 01 DKM19F1132. So today I'm going to share with you about the case study from engineering and society. For the number one answer is responsibility. A sense of moral responsibility and forward-looking is a sense in which a person is responsible for achieving good results in some things. The idea is that one is entrusted to achieve or maintain this result, and it is hoped that both of them have relevant knowledge and skill as well as make a careful effort. However, despite the best effort, the result may not be achievable. For example, a responsible doctor patient can die, and the work of responsible engineer can result in an accident because the accident is unpredictable. Impossible to compensate for the cause of accident or because others do not want to hit the engineer warning. A sense of moral is responsibility, and backwards is that where a person or group deserve an ethical assessment of an action or outcome. One who is quick to receive cannot be confused with a sense of cause and effect responsibility for some existing or past circumstance. Although when a moral agent is responsible for a result, that is the reason to think that the agent is morally responsible for it. However, causal responsibility is not definitive proof of moral responsibility. If one action brings bad results or because of bad luck in the form of an accident, then one is not morally responsible for the results. Future responsibility is often determined in terms of the outcome to be achieved rather than the action to be taken. Consideration is required to know what action will achieve certain outcomes. Such practical wisdom is not required to fulfill the many obligations that are often determined in terms of action to be taken to be avoided. For example, constraints and responsibility of engineers for the safety of the public with the obligation of citizens to testify when witness a crime. Not that obligation will never be used in a responsible way is referred one welfare. That is, you will not say that the person is obligated, although you may say that he is responsible. So the conclusion is engineer A does not have ethical obligation to continue his effort to secure a change in the policy of his employer under the circumstance, or to report his concern to proper authority, but has an ethical right to do so as a matter of personal conscience. For the answer of Case study 2. The duty of engineer to be responsible for a professional service is the basic ethical principle contained in the NSP Code of Ethics. In general, engineers are professionals have a responsibility to assume responsibility for the professional service performed by them or under their direct personal supervision. Depending on the nature of the work and other requirements, this may include work done for the benefit of the client, design work, report plans, specification, and work completed by the engineer who will be submitted to the public authority for approval. Engineers who work for one firm then move to another firm are not exempt for this professional responsibility. The work they did for the previous employer was not less, also because they no longer had a direct relationship with the company. Once a professional provides professional service on behalf of the client, the professional must ensure that the work is done in a responsible and professional manner, and that the client interests are protected and safeguarded. This situation can be very sensitive, where an engineer leaves the company to work with a computer company. This issue has been discussed by BAR. and on many occasions. However, the fact that the two companies are in direct competition should not assume the responsibility of the engineer, total responsibility for the job. Take appropriate measure in the interest of the client. It seems that it is just not an ethical act but also an action that suits the interest of the party, including the interest of the new firm employed by the current engineer. It is not entirely clear but from the fact that to what extent the work was completed by the engineer Sarina. However, it can assume that the fact that the use on the term almost complete that the work was complete in almost all respects and only a few ministry details still have to be carried out on the basis in the assumption that Engineer Tan will not be asked to conduct a complete or detailed review of the job, as it can be assumed that Engineer Sarina is already very familiar with the job on the project for which he has been continued to be responsible. Moreover, it does not appear under the fact that because Engineer Sarina was not employed by an original firm and that it, moreover, it not about the fact that was not employed by the original firm at the time he was asked to assign and close the protocol and the work, and he would violate the ethical claims and content on SPE Code of Ethics. For the question 3, in general, the NSPE Code of Ethics places an obligation on all engineers to respect the reputation of all other engineers in their professional endeavors. Engineers should be honest and direct in their communication with the College of all professional matters. Often, individual engineers have professional and business relationships with their professional counterparts. They require the use of average judgment and discretion. The Board of Ethics has not had the opportunity to deal with any type of case, especially explained in the fact that present in the matter the issue of public criticism by other engineer, but his judgment is very different in that case, as the board understood the fact engineer at least need the service of the structural engineer in another jurisdiction, and so the advice of colleagues is that jurisdiction the secretary. This is the entirely impartial and certainly not contrary to the code. It seems that the one and only action that engineer Alice can question is when faced under a satisfactory professional performance of the secretary. Engineer Alice pays attention to this fact under the secretary. While engineer Alice communication with the secretary may be an method of providing feedback, engineer Alice should also direct comment about engineer Anna to engineer Anna. If engineer Alice has a difficult communicating with engineer Anna, she would probably explore the other avenue of relationship, perhaps frustrated by the inability to receive a response from engineer Anna. Engineer Alice's deliberability made her views known the secretary to make a fuss of engineer Anna. Next to another question, we do not believe the secretary was involved in the improper action. First, based on the fact, we assume that engineer Alice to engineer Anna in good faith and did not know any history of the engineer Anna, also the act of fraud. Second, based on the fact, we do not believe the secretary disclosure to engineer Anna and the engineer Alice's satisfaction is a violation of engineer belief in Alice. In fact, as we already know, there seems to be no indication that engineer Alice means secretary to make engineer Alice unhappy, known to engineer Anna. While the facts do not provide enough detail, we believe that engineer Anna has a professional responsibility to communicate more directly with engineer Alice about the status of the project. However, we do not believe engineer Anna's action violate the code of ethics. Finally, although it seems that engineer Anna is advised to improve her practice, The facts of the case do not indicate that Anjana is unethical. That's all from me. Thank you, sir.